Hello everyone, and welcome. This video will be a dissection of the Space Marine 2 trailer that came out in 2021, the cinematic trailer. The idea behind this video is to explain some of the smaller lore aspects that might go unnoticed to some of the newer Warhammer 40k players so that you're a bit more informed about what's happening. So, here we go. Already we see three kind of spaceships, so we're going to see them in a little bit more detail in a second, but these spaceships are called Thunderhawks. They're the standard transport, small transport spaceships used by Space Marines. As you can see, they can fly in space and they can be used on a planet, and essentially, yes, Space Marines use them to transport around. Okay, an interesting visual here. So first we see this logo. This is the Imperial Aquila, the official logo in the Imperium. And we get to see, I believe the color palette here is some blue and some white. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a second. Okay, we got our first good look at the enemy of the Space Marines in this trailer. So these are the Tyranids. They're essentially a hive mind type faction, where some specific units control some of the smaller mindless units using what we call a synapse connection. My God. When it comes to the Tyranids, these units here, we see the color scheme is white and purple. There's different hive fleets that exist of the Tyranids, but the way we distinguish them is by their color scheme. White and purple is specific to Hive Fleet Leviathan, which is one of the main hive fleets in the universe. Alright, so here we see regular human beings fighting. Essentially, regular people like you and me with some flak armor and some brownish uniforms. These are the Imperial Guard. They're the main fighting force of the Imperium because there's billions upon billions of them. They're nowhere near as strong as a Space Marine individually, but there's tons of them. And they're the ones defending against this Tyranid assault on the front lines, and it seems like these Space Marines are coming to help them.
Company command! This is first platoon! We've lost the square! We can't hold it!
Okay, we get a better look at our Tyranids here. So we get to more clearly see the white and purple color scheme. As you can see, this unit here that's clearly a little bit more bulky and beefy than the other. This is called a Tyranid warrior. Still a relatively mindless unit being controlled by other synaptic Tyranid units, but this one is a little bit more powerful than the average mindless Tyranid unit. Okay, we got our first look of our blue boys, our Space Marines. So a lot to unpack here. First of all, we know that these are Ultramarines based off of the logos we see on the knee pads and the shoulder pad here. There's this kind of round U, and they're all in blue. That's standard Ultramarines color. So first detail that we can look at in the Space Marines is the shoulder trim. So the shoulders of the Space Marines, the lining that goes outside of the shoulders, is indicative of which company they serve in. So a typical chapter, and the Ultramarines are a Space Marine chapter, is divided into 10 companies, each company having about 100 Space Marines for a total of 1,000 in a chapter at full strength. The companies essentially go in descending order in terms of strength. So the first company usually is the best of the Space Marines of the chapter, the second is the second best, etc. And the 10th is the neophytes and the brand new Space Marines. Now, the way we differentiate them is with the silver lining, or not the silver lining, the shoulder lining. The color of the shoulder lining will be different depending on the company you're in. So a gold trim means second company. So while it's not the first company, this is a pretty prestigious and strong company. This is some big boys. Now, in terms of what's on the shoulder pads, the right shoulder pad always usually has the logo of the chapter you're serving into. So here we see the Ultramarines logo, and these guys probably have something similar. On the left shoulder pad, we get a bit more information that is typical of a Space Marine. Now, we don't get to see the left shoulder pad of our boy on the left here, or sorry, the right shoulder pad of our boy on the left and the right shoulder pad of our boy on the right. But our guy in the middle seems to have a skull with a red star around it. This is typical of Space Marine lieutenants, which usually there's a few of these in a company, and they're sent usually on squads when you really want a mission to succeed. You know, they're some of the best Space Marines in the company itself. They're kind of only second to the company captain in terms of leadership and strength. We don't see the right shoulder pads of these other two yet, but once we see them, we'll be able to analyze them. Now, let's look at the helmets. So each Space Marine depicted here has a different colored helmet. For the one on the left, we see a blue helmet. This is the standard helmet, really. This guy is essentially a regular battle brother. There's nothing special to him in the sense that he's not in charge of a squad. He's not some lieutenant. He's not some high-placed Space Marine. He's just a regular, good old battle brother. Reliable as always. The guy in the middle has a blue helmet with a red and a white strip in the middle, and you can't see it too clearly, but I guarantee you that's a little silver skull at the front. Skulls in the Imperium insignias are usually signs of leadership. So this guy, he's a leader in some way, shape, or form, and this red and white strip pattern is consistent with a lieutenant. So lieutenants have this helmet, which makes sense with his shoulder pad. Now, the guy on the right has a fully red helmet with a skull on it. This is typical of a squad leader. So, or I guess a squad sergeant. You could just say a sergeant. Now, each company, as I said, are 100 Space Marines strong. They're divided into usually 10 to 20 squads. And each squad is essentially comprised of a sergeant leading the squad, and the rest are all regular battle brothers like this guy. So presumably, this guy with the red helmet has a squad that the regular battle brother is is inside of, and the lieutenant here was attached to this squad to ensure that their current mission goes well. But make no mistake, the guy currently in charge is definitely the lieutenant. He's higher ranked than the squad leader. The last thing we could talk about are the weaponry. Each and every Space Marine here has a different weapon. Let's start with the guy on the right. He's holding a regular bolter or bolt rifle. This is your standard Space Marine weapon. It can shoot quite far and from quite close. The ammunition is very deadly. It's relatively mobile while packing in quite a punch. The bolt rifle is like the standard Space Marine weapon. The guy on the left, his weapon's a little bit different based off of the magazine here. This looks like a higher capacity magazine. This is standard with an auto bolt rifle or an auto bolter. These are the same as bolters, but they hold more ammunition at the cost of less maneuverability and a little bit more weight. So I guess you have a little bit less mobility, but you can shoot more and you pack a bit more of a punch. So yeah, small differences, but a difference nonetheless. And finally, our lieutenant in the middle has a chainsword, and presumably if he has a chainsword, he also has a bolt pistol on his left leg pad. Now, chainswords are your classic melee Space Marine weapon. They're given to any Space Marine that are going to charge the front lines and, hit the enemy head on in melee. And these Space Marines obviously can't have a bolter because they're holding the chainsword. It'd be a little difficult. So they're given a bolt pistol, which is not quite as powerful as the bolter and the auto bolter, but does pack a bit of a punch. Gives them some firepower in case they need it. A small detail I want to bring to your attention here is if you look closely behind the power pack of this Space Marine here, there is a little a red wax seal with a couple parchment papers coming from it. This is called a purity seal. It's used by Space Marines a lot. It's essentially a mark of devotion and faith towards the Imperium and towards the Emperor. So it's pretty common for Space Marines to have those all over their armor here and there when they go to battle. We can see another purity seal, and this from the back is the lieutenant based off of the shoulder pad, and he also has a purity seal. So, a couple of interesting things about the dialogue being said here. He calls the Space Marines his angels, because Space Marines are known as the angels of death, and so in many ways the angels of death of the Emperor. Now, I know that we see Space Marines a lot, but regular guardsmen like this guy or regular people might never see Space Marines in their lives, or maybe once, yet they hear all about them, the angels of death. So seeing one come down from the sky to save you when you're on the brink of death has to be quite an experience to them. It's got to be like a myth you've heard your whole life about, and it suddenly comes real, this mythical creature or story. An interesting detail about this Guardman, if you look into his eyes, he has purple eyes. Those are typical of a Cadian Imperial Guard from Cadia. Now, I won't go into detail with Cadia. It's quite a story, but it used to be a very big Imperium fortress world where a lot of Imperial Guards came from. A nice little small detail that we get in the trailer. Okay, we get a couple more information. So, first of all, the Sergeant on the right has an Ultramarines logo with the red skull on it. Again, skulls in Warhammer are a sign of leadership, so this is consistent with what we said earlier. The Lieutenant doesn't have it because his skull is on the right, I assume. Now, we get to see the right shoulder pad of the regular Battle Brother. We still, unfortunately, can't see the Sergeants, but it is probably the same thing. Now, we see a logo here. It's an arrow pointing upwards. This logo of an arrow pointing upwards is a depiction of what this Space Marine squad specialty is. So, an arrow pointing upwards means a battle line squad. This is like your typical squad in the Imperium. They're flexible. They can fight in close range or in long range. They're not specialized into anything, but they're easily adaptable. Now, if you pay attention, there's a small little line here that seems to be blue inside of the logo. This is because the squad number will be written on the logo as a Roman numeral. I've said that companies can have up to 20 squads. So there would be a Roman numeral up there indicating that Space Marine squad. Now, we don't see the full number, but that appears to be a Roman V. And then since it's not centered, there's presumably another number afterwards. So that means they're either in the 6th, 7th, or 8th squad, I would say. But yeah, presumably the Sergeant on the right has the same thing on his shoulder pad. Now, there's other like symbolic things, chains with stuff on them, and these guys have stuff on their waist. Usually these have specific meanings for the Space Marines, and they're a preference to bring, whether it's for intimidation or because for some reason they want that. It's up to them, but these chains in itself they're kind of like purity seals. There's no norm. It's just kind of how the Space Marine wants to look. Okay, and now we get a look at Titus. You'll see that he has four golden studs on his forehead. Studs are used as some Space Marine chapters to depict how long a Space Marine has been in service. They're falling a bit out of fashion, but gold usually means 100 years of service. So presumably he's been in service for about 400 years. An average Space Marine has a lifespan, it seems like, in terms of old age, of about 1,000 years. So this guy is kind of old. Maybe the equivalent of like 40 years in human years, but he's really not that old. Alright, so that was that for the cinematic trailer. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you will enjoy the game when it comes out in a little more than a week. Have fun and have a good one.